What's going on, everybody? Meteorologist Mike Linden back again for another live stream update. It is 2:03 in the Eastern time zone. I hope you are all doing well. Before we get started, just some housekeeping notes. Of course, if you are watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to the channel and don't forget to click on that notification bell as well. That way you always know whenever we go live, whenever we put new content out there, some really exciting, cool stuff coming to the YouTube channel. We are always trying to outdo ourselves every single day. Of course, if you are not already following us across all of our social media channels, you can see them all down below. We've got, of course, the YouTube channel, Twitter, Instagram, as well as Facebook too. Be sure to not only follow us, but to interact with us as well. We try our best to be incredibly active, especially during an event such as this. And then finally, before we get to Delta, big shout out to Matt behind the scenes. Matt is going to be driving the show, if you will. And over these next couple of days, it is very likely to be kind of an all hands on deck situation with myself, Chief Digital Meteorologist Leslie Hudson, as well as meteorologist Stephanie Lauber, if all things go to plan. Now, earlier this morning, I should say, or earlier this afternoon, I guess, around 11 o'clock, Chief Digital Meteorologist Leslie Hudson gave an update on Hurricane Delta, the 25th named storm of the season thus far. Before we jump into it here, I've got to remind you, there have only been 2 times in history that we have gone into the Greek alphabet. The first, well, if you could tell me in the chat, that would be awesome. If you can answer the question, I won't give it away, but it has happened before, not too long ago. And also, or rather, tell me in the chat. And again, this is only the second time in history that it has happened. So an incredibly active year going into the Greek alphabet. I don't want to say it's somewhat misleading. We've had a lot of activity, but we've kind of, I don't want to jinx it or anything, but we've kind of been okay in terms of the catastrophic major landfalling hurricanes. We have seen those, bear in mind, but it doesn't necessarily match up to the year 2005 with Katrina, Rita, incredibly busy storm year, I should say. All right, I've got the chat up here in front of me as well. I'm going to jump around all over the place. What's up, everybody? Hope you are doing well. Let me know in the chat where you are watching from too, and I will try my best to answer all of your questions as we work our way through the chat here. I've got my iPad next to me. Matt's got the chat up there on screen. We'll take a look at that here as we get into the forecast. But first, Matt, let's go to the MyRadar app. We want to take a look at Hurricane Delta, and of course, one of my favorite features of the MyRadar app is the fact that there are so many features. It is completely customizable to look exactly how you want it to look, as well as show you what you want it to show you. Right now, Matt has the high definition radar turned on, as well as the hurricane tracker layer. This is an incredibly awesome tool that not only gives you detailed information about what the National Hurricane Center and what meteorologists are thinking when it comes to a particular event, but you can also see the path and the cone of uncertainty from the National Hurricane Center. Matt, let's zoom in there and we can take a look at Hurricane Delta. If you tap on it there, of course, that will tell you that Hurricane Delta, at least as it stands right now, is a Category 2 hurricane with wind speeds at 105 miles per hour, moving at 13 miles per hour, so starting to work its way northward here. And as we will soon talk about, the storm is growing. And that is why you are going to see potentially it go from a 2 to a 3. That would then be major hurricane status. And then, Matt, if you just move us up a little bit to the north there, closer to the coastline, you'll see that the NHC has it dropping down to Category 2. Of course, that would be right at making landfall. Looks like it would be on that 2 to 3 range, which of course is, again, that major hurricane status. But the storm is growing, will likely become a little stronger, but that will also help to almost somewhat weakened a little bit as it gets closer to the coastline there, as it's getting so big. These storms really want to stay really compact and tight. Think about it like when you're flexing your muscle, right? That's when you're engaging everything. That's what these storms want to do. Get nice and swole, but not get that big size, if that makes any sense. So let's take a look, Matt, if you can zoom us out here, and you can see that where it is going, expected to work its way all the way northward into and around the Tennessee, Kentucky area here. This is a very, very similar path to Hurricane Laura. And Matt, if you want to go into the layers menu there, click on the hurricane tracker. And then what we're going to do is we're going to turn on Hurricane Laura's path. So all you have to do, you can see all the storms that have already occurred so far this season. We got Sally, Paulette, got to keep going there. And there's Laura, Category 4. And this is going to show you the path of Laura. If it turns on for us here, well, there you go. We're going to have to reach out to our developers. It is not turning on there. So it has it as its tropical storm. Well, hey, if any developers are watching, there you go. But either way, you are able to turn on those current path, or the historical paths, rather, to see where these storms are going. There you go. I don't know why Sally is functioning there. Either way, we move on. Let's take a look, Matt, at the weather graphics that I have prepared for everybody, and we will jump right in to the show. And again, if you have any questions for me, whether it be for myself, for Matt, Damien, whoever, please let me know, and we will answer those questions. By the way, big shout out to Fully Un, who answered the question correctly. The answer was 2005 was the other season to use the Greek alphabet. There have only been 2 seasons, 2020 and 2005. 2005, of course, an incredibly active, historic season in its own right. But when all is said and done on this year, this will be a year that goes down in history for being incredibly active, producing storms early in the season, late in the season, wild stuff here into 2020. And what a year it has been across the world, huh? And it is still October 8th. Now, looking at the tropical infrared imagery here on Delta, you can see that it's kind of wobbling a little bit. But if you live in and along the coastline of Texas, you're probably watching this and going, what is this guy talking about? Why has he not mentioned anything that this is right off the coastline of Texas? Well, it might be a little subtle to see here, but the storm has kind of begun to work its way northeast, kind of somewhat starting to begin that turn, not in a major way. But of course, the turn is, I mean, that's how tropical meteorologists make their money, right? Forecasting that turn. And that is very important, because that's information you really don't want to get necessarily wrong. Because, I mean, if it weren't for the fact that that National Hurricane Center track goes right up and through the Louisiana area, well, if you had that track going through central Texas, you're talking about a humongous difference. So a big shout out to who I like to call the Navy SEALs of tropical meteorology, the folks at the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida. So Hurricane Delta here has already kind of undergone what's called eye wall replacement, where the storm has strengthened so rapidly that it kind of wraps itself around its own eye there and seemingly replaces it, which makes that storm grow, but it loses a little bit of that oomph we talked about. Remember, these things want to be tight, compact, almost similar to how when you're looking at a line of advancing thunderstorms, it's those storms off by themselves, those little rogue storms that are growing. You see the hook echo there. Those are the ones to worry about, because they don't want to share. Thunderstorms don't want to give any of the available energy to any of the other storms. They want it all for themselves. They're very selfish. And hurricanes are similar to that as well, in the sense that they command a lot of attention, but they really want to do what they want to do, and that's staying over water. That's its life source, right? It's kind of like folks that work in TV news, as myself, Leslie, and Stephanie all have in the past. Coffee is the lifeblood of everybody that works in television. I don't think I can even think of one person that I worked with that didn't drink coffee or eventually went to drink coffee. All right, I digress. Let's look at the tropical tracker here over the next 5 days. There's Delta, again, a Category 2 storm about 370 miles south of the coastline, and we are very likely to see Delta make landfall as we work our way into Friday. It's likely to be sometime late Friday, early Friday evening, potentially on that Cat 3, Cat 2 threshold. And look at the path here, folks. I mean, this is so similar to Laura, so similar. And it seems like that has really begun to align up as the National Hurricane Center has slowly began to push this drifting westward, Louisiana to kind of southwestern Louisiana. We're talking the Lake Charles area, seemingly right here in the path of the cone here. Let me zoom on in for you so you can get a closer look. And that is, at least as of now, the path. Keep in mind that red line, that's just meant to show you kind of the center of the cone. But anywhere that falls within, let me see if I can grab my pointer tool here. Anything that falls within these white lines, that's the cone. So it's not, a guarantee this thing's going exactly down the middle here. But this is kind of the margin of error that the National Hurricane Center is giving to the forecast when it comes to intensity, how it's moving right now. A lot of factors go into this, but this does cover a fair chunk of real estate, and you will see this kind of narrow in over the next day. But at this point, if you do live along the southern Louisiana coastline, in fact, most of the coastline, as you'll soon see in a moment, and the far eastern portion of Texas, Galveston, you're not in the cone, but you're still very likely to get rough surf, as well as the potential for some storm surge too. So you are, again, running out of time. If you live along the Gulf Coast, you need to get those final preps underway now. I know it's a hassle. Believe me, I totally get it. I live in Florida. I know how it goes. It's one more thing I got to do. This is one of those things where afterward, you gotta hope everything goes well, and more than likely it should, if you did take the proper precautions. But it's one of those situations where after it's over, you'll be glad. You will be glad that you put that plywood up if you needed to, if you had the non-perishable foods ready to go, the water for at least a week. I can't stop talking about these things, these power banks where you can charge USB devices. These are almost a necessity here in 2020, as everyone for the most part has a mobile phone. And if you lose power, you won't be able to charge your phone, of course, and get important information from it, whether it be from the National Weather Service, from the MyRadar app, giving you updates along the way. And of course, if you want to stay connected to everything that's going on social media in the midst of this, you got to have your cell phone charged. So it might be a little too short a notice to get one of these from good old Jeff Bezos, but you would certainly be able to find these almost everywhere nowadays. So I highly recommend one of those. And don't forget the pet food too. Leslie would be pretty upset if I didn't talk about our fur babies, right? I got two right here, staying quiet for now. Okay, so let's look at the current watches and warnings from Delta here. That red color, oops, got to jump back. Sorry, folks. That red color there, that is perhaps the most, it deserves the most attention. It deserves priority, and that is a hurricane warning. And notice that does take up almost all of the southern and southwestern Louisiana coastline, from the Morgan City area all the way west to Port Arthur, through to Lake Charles, and it stops kind of just to the east of Galveston there. But that purple color, that is a tropical storm warning. Again, Galveston is not in the cone. That cone kind of extends, as we just saw not too long ago here, extends to pretty much where this red line ends. So you may see that get kind of honed in here over the next day. But even Galveston, even for you folks that live here, even though you are under a tropical storm warning, you should almost treat it like a hurricane warning, really. You'll thank yourself. Your future self will thank your past self big time for doing that. You got to take these things seriously. Mother Nature is very fickle and, quite frankly, doesn't really care about us all that much. In fairness, some people really don't care all that much about Mother Nature. That's a discussion for another day. But she's very serious. And these hurricanes, as I'm sure folks in the Gulf Coast that have had just a time with it, huh? What a season it has been. Now, here is the storm surge potential, and this is what you really need to not overlook, right? Hurricanes, of course, bring the wind, they bring the rain, they can bring tornadoes, they can bring a lot. But the number one killer when it comes to natural disasters is inland flooding. Number one. That's why meteorologists, the Flash, the folks at Flash, like Leslie Chapman Henderson, has talked about turn around, don't drown. I'm sure you've heard that a million times, right? That is so, so important, because it only takes really a little bit of water to take you as a human being off your feet, let alone to lift up a car and float it away. Just a couple of feet to do that, a couple of inches to knock a human being off their feet. And with, as you can see here, the storm surge potential between 4 and 11 feet. I mean, the average human being is what, somewhere in the 5'6", 5'7", 5'8" range. I'm not 100% sure there. I'm 6'3", so that's water almost double my height. That it does not belong on land. Think about it in that sense. Not to mention that we have a lot of these locations here along the Gulf Coast that are already below sea level, right? So it could quickly become a situation if you don't take it seriously. And look how far inland this storm surge warning is going. New Orleans, you're in this storm surge watch, but again, treat it the same. That's really the best way to go in these situations. And again, almost all of the Louisiana coastline and even into Mississippi, folks. Biloxi, Mississippi, a storm surge warning as well. Let me zoom out. Let's take a look over at the Lone Star State here. And the good news is that, again, Texas, at least as a whole, it's only a very small chunk of real estate that is involved with the storm surge potential. But again, even if you are not in this at all, treat it the same. That's really the best way to go. Better to prepare than fail to prepare, right? I think I said that right. Prepare to fail. Fail to prepare and prepare to fail. That's it. There you go. Write that one down. All right. Now, the potential inundation, and what that word means is, again, water or whatever it is that is going somewhere where it's not supposed to be, inundating the area. And here you can see the forecast from the National Hurricane Center and the Weather Prediction Center. Those numbers go fairly high. Anywhere where you see red is close to that 10-foot mark, right? So from west of Morgan City through to New Iberia into Kaplan and into Cameron there, pushing all the way west along the Louisiana coastline there. And again, for folks that live in Lake Charles that are still picking up the pieces after Hurricane Laura, again, timing not necessarily on your side. This goes back to what I said about Mother Nature not too long ago, right? But again, you need to take these seriously. And then if we continue to work our way west here, even into Galveston, 1 foot, of water in terms of the storm surge. And that is enough, of course, to knock you, a person, off of your feet and drag you away. Wild stuff, folks. Hurricane Delta not messing around. Now, let's take a look at the sea surface temperatures. These are, of course, very important. There's so many factors that come into play when it comes to the development and the intensification of a hurricane. It needs warm water in order to live, right? In order for it to grow, in order for it to keep on going, it needs the warm water. The Gulf of Mexico these past couple of years particularly has broken records each and every year for the heat trapped in the Gulf of Mexico. If you've ever been to the beach on the western coastline of Florida, we're talking Tampa, St. Pete, Naples, the water is incredibly warm compared to the Atlantic, which is a warm ocean current, the Pacific not. But the Gulf of Mexico, we're going to find kind of the warmest water anywhere really in the United States, other than right there along the southern tip near Miami, the Florida Keys too. But it's the Gulf of Mexico where we are going to find the warmest water. Important to remember as we talk about many of the factors that can impact a hurricane, you have shear, right, which is wind. And Matt, if you want to bring me on camera here just so I can play charades here, it might help. Shear, kind of at its simplest, right? If you have wind going in one direction, right? I'll just go like this. Wind going in one direction. Shear would be if you have winds going in a direction that doesn't match the original one, right? So it could be winds from the north and winds coming in from the west or east, and you get that shear, right? In a tornado or in a tornado genesis situation, you kind of need that shear to get going. But with a hurricane, these are so big, so tall storms that shear could chop it at the mid and upper levels, right? So it could very well have its feet, so to speak, planted in the ground here. But think about trying to like stretch, right? In the morning, you want to get up and stretch, but you can't get higher than this. This is as high as you can go. You hit your ceiling. That's kind of what that shear is acting to do a little bit, chopping it apart at those mid-levels. So we do have that. We'll look at that in just a moment on the water vapor. There is dry air coming in from Texas. Of course, not necessarily what this storm wants. It wants the warm, wet air. And then finally, the sea surface temperatures. With Laura, we were looking at sea surface temperatures in the upper 80s, if not low 90s, really the peak of the warmth in the Gulf of Mexico. But looking at this map here, you're seeing a lot of blue kind of in the map here. And that's cooler water, only by a little bit, but that's very important. Once you get over this kind of 80, 81, lower 80s mark into 82, that's when you're talking some real fuel here for these storms. But with these hurricanes and with how active it has been along the Gulf Coast, Sally, Laura.
I couldn't hear what you said.
Oh, I got Siri talking over here. With Sally and Laura both impacting the Gulf Coast, it did help to kind of churn some of the water that's way deep in the Gulf of Mexico and bring it to the surface through a process called upwelling. And what that's essentially doing is it's that cooler water is replacing the warmer water at the surface. And of course, as we just talked about, hurricanes want warm water. Relatively, of course, but they want warm water to grow. So could be a bit of a saving grace for the further intensification of Laura. Let me pull up. I just realized I did not have it here. I'm going to bring in the water vapor so we can take a look at this. And then once we get through the water vapor, I've got one or two more things to show you, and then I will answer your questions as they come in. Again, big shout out to everybody watching. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are doing safe here on this Thursday afternoon. Here is the water vapor satellite, folks. And let me pull up my pointer tool, if we can. Oop. Let me see. I might not be able to use the pointer tool for right now, which is a bit of a bummer. I will have that figured out for the next live stream. Oh, how about that? I can't. Well, either way, I'll have to talk through it here. That kind of beige, brownish kind of color there right over top of Oklahoma and Texas, that's a low pressure center working its way eastward. I think I'm on a timer there. That might be what's happening. But that is drier air working its way eastward. And that's going to help to kind of nudge this thing, that being Delta, north and eastward, kind of pushing it in the right, maybe isn't the right direction, the right term here, but you guys know what I'm saying, pushing it eastward, right? And away from Texas. So the timing is helping you out in that regard, folks that live in the Lone Star State. But let's take a look here at the European Futurecast, the ECMWF model. And again, all of these models, that being the GFS, the European, the NAM, the HER, all these models, they all look at so many different factors. And if you were to look at just one of these models and go, that's it, that's the forecast, locked in, you are doing yourself a disservice. It'd be as if you were putting a research paper together and you literally only read one article, and that was what you based everything on. That would be silly and just kind of foolish, right? You want to look at as much information as you have available to you. But I'm going to show you the Futurecast for the Euro here. I've looked at all of the models, but the European has done really well at kind of keeping the track of this thing consistent. And notice there, I'm going to have to bring it back here. Look at the time. That's right around 4:30 in the afternoon. That's earlier than what the official forecast is from the National Hurricane Center. And we very well may see that NHC forecast get adjusted here over the next couple of hours. But that right about there would be a landfall. We're talking between 4:30 and 6 o'clock-ish. And that could, again, potentially change. But look at where it's going, folks. Right near Lake Charles. And again, this is a maybe. It's not a guarantee by any stretch, but this is definitely more west than what the National Hurricane Center had even just 2 days ago. So they are slowly creeping this thing westward. And for folks that live on the eastern coastline of Louisiana, that being New Orleans, and even folks in Biloxi, Mississippi, don't want to give you guys the all clear necessarily. You're not at this point looking likely you're going to take an impact from a hurricane, but it's that storm surge, the inland flooding, that's going to be what you may see. And you may definitely as well see some severe thunderstorms coming in off the coastline too. If you remember with Laura, those bands swinging inland, that's what's going to bring those stronger thunderstorms, the heavy rain, and maybe even some tornadoes out of that too. Working its way all the way north and eastward and into the Ohio and Tennessee River valleys as we head into late Sunday and into Monday morning. And with it, a lot of rain, folks. Look at that tongue of moisture coming in off the Gulf, let alone the flooding, right? 4 to 11 feet of flooding, storm surge rather, along the coastline. you're looking at potentially all the way into Arkansas and into northwestern Mississippi, near 5 to 7 inches of rain over the next 3 days. So that's enough to give you pause, even if you're not going to be dealing with the hurricane force winds for folks in Arkansas and northern Mississippi, western Tennessee, western Kentucky. You still could be looking at some really rough flooding. So if you have an area near you, a side road, or there's that one pesky spot near you, a culvert or something that always seems to runneth over, keep an eye on that, especially as Delta comes through. Matt, if you want to bring it back to the 2-shot there, and let's bring the MyRadar app up. I am going to grab the chat, or rather, if you want to bring the chat up there, Matt, I'll answer some questions that we have here, and then we will likely wrap this thing up. We've been talking now for a good half an hour, and I will be back for the next live stream coming up at 5 o'clock. That is like 5 o'clock Eastern, I should say. Now, we've got, I'm going to look at a bunch of channels, look at a bunch of the social media channels. So we've got someone from YouTube that says, go to your car and charge. So, man, not a good idea. We'll leave it at that. If you're hunkering down, if you're putting plywood on your doors, on your windows, and you're trying to, stay safe in your home, you're not going to be able to go outside and charge. Even if your car's parked in your driveway, the driveway could potentially, or rather the garage, I should say, the garage is, this is a fact, the weakest spot in the home when it comes to the biggest exterior entrance, essentially. That's the biggest access port to the outside world. And if your garage door were to fail, it creates a pressure differential with these winds rushing into the house and putting pressure on the house, and particularly on the roof. It's called the balloon effect. We did a piece on it with Flash at the beginning of hurricane season. I highly suggest you check it out. But essentially, as I'm sure you know, with a balloon, if you put too much air into it, you know what happens. So don't even be in your garage. You want to be in a central location away from the windows. Treat it like you would a tornado. You want to be away from any of the potential hazards. So going to your car and charging your device, not ideal. Okay, we've got Matt saying someone asked about North Louisiana. There it is. Big shout out to Ryan. So that's a great question, Ryan. Let's pull the MyRadar app up. Matt, if you want to take that. So Ryan, in northern Louisiana there, we're going to have to zoom in, Matt, if we could. Thank you very much. I'm also just now realizing, Matt, I think you changed the colors for the radar. Again, so much you can do in the MyRadar app. It's still a big deal. Unless I'm just losing my mind. I don't think so. I've been looking at so much reflectivity lately. Don't worry about it. It's all good. But there's a lot, of course, you can change in MyRadar. Super cool stuff. Again, making landfall potentially, at least from the National Hurricane Center's expectation, as a Category 3, if not 2, right there on that edge. But if we're talking the Alexandria area, I don't know exactly where you live there, Ryan, but you're looking at the storm weakening to a tropical storm at that point, but you could still be looking at some pretty strong gusty winds over, 45 miles per hour with, again, a lot of rain, that 5 to 7 inch swath of rain. Matt, if you want to pull the weather graphics back up here, I've still got that graphic pulled up, the rain potential. That is what you should really be looking at here if you do live in northern Louisiana. Let me zoom this in. Let me grab my zoom box tool and we will zoom right in. Anywhere where you see this orange-red color, that's 5 inches of rain. So Ryan, again, without knowing exactly where you live, I mean, you're looking at a lot of rain. So that's what you should prepare for over the next couple of days. The strong winds, yes, but keep in mind, as we talked about, these storms really want to be over warm water, and the moment they are no longer under warm water, the weakening process is going to begin. Now, that's not 100% true. There could still be a little strengthening right there at the landfall as portions of the storm is still kind of over water, but once the core of this thing is over land, you're talking about it being pretty close to all she wrote here. Now, let me jump back to the chat here, Matt, if you want to pull that up for me here. And then I think that we are going to wrap things up. Let me take a look at the chat and let me jump back over The Louisiana-Arkansas border. Okay, yeah, so you're right there, Ryan, on that kind of 5-ish kind of inch threshold for rain. Now, over a 3-day period, it's not just going to be a deluge on top of you. That might be the case for the folks on the coast, of course, but for you, Ryan, just be prepared. Of course, even if you are not going to be taking the full blast of these things, it is better to be prepared and, of course, to listen. I cannot emphasize this enough. Listen to local emergency management officials. Myself, Chief Digital Meteorologist Leslie Hudson, Meteorologist Stephanie Lauber. I mean, we'll be here, right? We will be giving you forecast information, but we're speaking from a really large area here. It would be next impossible for us to give guidance for all of these little municipalities all across the United States. So please, please, please listen to the local police department, fire department, EMS, the emergency management officials. Those are the people that you should be listening to when it comes to what should be done next. We can give you advice when it comes to the preparations ahead of time, but when it comes to dealing with it in the moment, local emergency management officials are the people to reach out to. Okay. And if you, of course, are looking for more information regarding your local emergency management, I know that within FEMA's website, you can find your local emergency management office. You could even Google the county that you live in, EMA. That's going to be the key, those 3 letters, EMA, Emergency Management Agency. Okay. Now, I think that we're going to be good to go here, Matt. I'm just going to jump over real quick to the Facebook chat here. I know that we have kind of all the chat right up there, but I just want to be sure I'm not necessarily missing anything over on Facebook either. I don't think so. Okay, Huntsville, Alabama. We can answer your question here. So let's take a look. I'll pull up the graphics here, Matt, if you want to pull those up for me too. You are not in the cone, so to speak, right? You can see that you're likely seeing rain where you live right now. We're actually going to take a look at a webcam here coming up. I can't believe I didn't take that off the top. We'll get to that in a moment. But let me pull up the cone from the NHC here, and you will see that northern Alabama, you're in the cone, but boy, just barely here, huh? So, oops, wrong direction. Here we go. So at this point, you're looking at it, weakening to a storm and into a tropical depression. So again, the strong winds won't be much of a concern, being that those will be close to where the center of this thing goes, which could very well be over northern Alabama. But it's likely for you in northern Alabama, likely to be a lot of rain coming your way. Let me pull that forecast up for you, and we'll take a look at it. So again, northern Alabama, you're kind of in that on the lower end of the 3 to 5 range. The blue color there is 3 inches of rain, right? So that's what Alabama is likely looking at here as we get over the next 3-day period. Okay, I think that we should be good here. Don't want to go too long. Again, I will be back coming up at 5 o'clock. Matt, before we go, I can't believe I almost forgot it again. Let's take a live look at, I believe it's Baton Rouge, right? East Baton Rouge County at Alex Box Stadium, thanks to our partners at WeatherStem. And here is again a live look at the Baton Rouge area of Louisiana. I believe that stadium right there in the foreground is where the LSU Tigers play baseball. That's pretty neat. But you can see already kind of a cloudy, dreary Thursday afternoon for the folks in Louisiana, and it is likely to get even more active for the folks that live there here over the next 24 hours as Hurricane Delta approaches. Okay, Matt, let's bring it home now. Again, if you are watching on YouTube, right underneath me there is the YouTube information, MyRadar, youtube.com/MyRadar. Of course, be sure to click on that subscribe button and do not forget to turn notifications on. That way you always know whenever we are live. You can be the first to say hi. You can be the first to ask a question. Let us know. We would love to help you out. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook as well. Interact with us. We love it. And we try our best to keep things as active as possible for you guys. We pride ourselves on being very communicative, where you might be able to ask a question to another meteorologist and they might take a long time to get back to you. We kind of pride ourselves at staying very active and staying direct with our users, which we know you guys love. So again, if you have anything else that you would like to ask us, whether it be myself, Chief Digital Meteorologist Leslie Hudson, Meteorologist Stephanie Lauber, or Matt and Damian behind the scenes, big shout out to Fernan helping us tomorrow as well. If you have any questions for them, go ahead and ask questions in the chat. We will try our best to answer them later this evening. But again, that's going to do it for the afternoon. I will be back in around 2.5 hours at 5 o'clock Eastern time for the next update. But until then, from all of us at MyRadar, stay safe and stay dry. We'll catch you in the next one.